Now, my talk today is a talk. It's not an entertainment. It might be something that you all know everything about. But I would bet half my pension that a lot of you don't know about the subject, don't know all that much about the subject. And particularly the sort of slightly different slant that I'm going to put on it in the next 15 or 20 minutes. Now, you all know my background, it's in the flyer. Suffice to say that I've been in the hardcore leadership business since I took command of my first troop of soldiers in the NATO environment at the tender age of 20, a long time ago. But just a couple of questions before I start. Now, you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but how many here today, I know there's at least one, have actually served in the armed forces? You don't have to answer if you don't want to. 3, 4, right. Okay, so 4 or 5. Brilliant. Now, how many here today are what I call self-employed? And by that I mean not working with others. How many are self-employed? 1, 2, 3, 4. So about the same number. Interesting. Right, well, the aim of this, what should be a 20-minute session, I'm going to tell you how and why effective leadership in the armed forces is actually much easier to achieve in the armed forces than it is for you as a civilian in the commercial or the business environment. And then I'm going to give you a few pointers on how to make the leadership challenge you face a lot easier and much more enjoyable and hopefully satisfying. All this in just 20 minutes. Now, let me say why leadership is comparatively easy in the armed forces. Now, the armed forces, and by that I mean the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, are, of course, hierarchical organizations based on well-defined structures designed to provide the country with specific types of operational capability to suit our defense. And that's the same in most countries. Now, these structures sometimes change to meet new threats or the introduction of new military technology, but essentially the armed forces are well structured from top to bottom to meet current operational roles. Leadership in the armed forces is made all the easier by the fact that the appointed leader at every level is never isolated. There's physical, practical, and moral support available from all directions, from above, from the left and right, and from below. Now, even during recruit training, servicemen and women are trained and developed to lead. And pretty quickly, they're expected to understand the role and the purpose of a leader in the military environment. Of course, in time, they also become managers, controlling resources, equipment, and inanimate things. But as leaders, they're trained to control people. Our leadership is all about achieving things with people. The success of leaders at all levels in the military is absolutely essential to overall success. That stands to reason. The military achieves things by way of the chain of command, or chains of command. And we all know that a chain always breaks at its weakest link. And no military person ever wants to be confronted by those chilling words, "You are the weakest link." We've heard that before if you watch the TV. Consequently, in the armed forces, leadership awareness and development is a constant theme, a steel thread, if you like, running through everything that's done in peace or in war, and something that's constantly tested for its strength and its durability. But there's more to it than that. The ultimate test of leadership skills in the armed forces is often to do with survival, winning or losing in tough competition against a resourceful enemy or in extremely challenging conditions and circumstances. In these difficult situations, every serviceman at every level has a vested interest in his or her leaders, in their commanders, and in their bosses, and has that vested interest to ensure that they are successful in their leadership challenges. Now this is because everyone is part of the overall capability that's deployed to deal effectively with the operational task, whatever that task might be, irrespective of their rank or seniority. And if you think about it, in the military, everyone has an equal level of investment in the business. They're all equal shareholders. The success of an operational task can be jeopardized by a weak link, or a link that fails somewhere along that chain of command. And nobody, but nobody, wants to see this happen. Again, for obvious reasons. So, how is this happy state of affairs achieved? Well, it's got a lot to do with loyalty. Now, loyalty to one's own service, be that the Navy, the Army, or the Air Force. Loyalty to one's ship, or regiment, or air squadron, but perhaps above all, loyalty to one's immediate colleagues and comrades and bosses in what is generally a tough job that's much more than a job. It's a vocation. It's a way of life for 5, 10, 22, 37 years. Now, loyalty is a funny old thing, and in the military environment, it usually cements unbreakable bonds which ensure success in the toughest situations. I ask you, how much loyalty is there in evidence where you work? In most cultures, you can't really buy loyalty. It has to be earned. But you can and should always expect it when sound leadership is otherwise being applied. There is, however, one secret ingredient in the armed forces mix that binds things together. Mindful of the constant demand for success, and often success against the odds, it's a notion that should be talked about in the same breath as leadership. And in the military, we call it followership. But where do you find a book on followership? Who's out there giving talks on the circuit on the combined effects of good leadership and followership? How many managers or bosses do you know who feel totally isolated and beleaguered in their leadership role because they don't know how to develop followership? Followership amongst their subordinates, followership in their team, in their group, in their organization or their workforce, followership amongst their people. Now, I just want to now look briefly at how you might assess your own leadership challenge and the importance of that. Actually, since I retired from the Army, I've seen clear evidence of managers, bosses, and business owners struggling with leadership issues and failing to grasp the fact that leadership is all about inspiring people. Human beings who will nearly always respond to being valued, treated properly, and given a level of responsibility that suits their capabilities. And you've heard other speakers here this afternoon touch on this. Now, if you need my advice, I'd say that instead of burying your head in a pile of must-read books on how to be a great leader, you should first take a step back and ask yourself, why do I need to be a leader? What am I leading, and to what end? What are we being paid to do? What's the purpose of what we're doing? And just think about it. Even if you are self-employed, you have to lead and motivate yourself. And that's not easy. I can tell you for sure. because I was in that situation for a few years after I finally retired from the army. I found myself to be a very difficult person to lead and to motivate in the civilian and commercial environment, and some would say in the real world. And I had to learn some very hard lessons and some new techniques in order to keep myself going in the right direction. So, even if you are self-employed, you're still a leader. But then, the golden opportunity. I got a job in the Middle East where I had to set up an organization consisting of about 70 members of staff, all of whom had to be fluent in English. But they came from many different cultures. In fact, 13 different nationalities. It was then that I fully appreciated the very strong combined effect of good leadership and good followership amongst a very mixed team of civilians, as opposed to a group of military professionals. A team of civilians hurriedly drawn together to achieve some very difficult and demanding tasks. Demanding tasks in which, for the first time in my professional career, keeping within budget was a strict constraint used as a measure of my success. So I was completely out of my comfort zone at the age of 58. Now let's look a bit more closely at this notion of followership. So how do we engender this followership stuff in your team or your organization? Well, first of all, you have to have a team with some sort of organizational structure. Many people don't. A lot of managers and bosses think that they've got a team, but all they really have is a group of individuals with no real sense of purpose or sense of direction. Remember, ask yourself, why are we here? What are we here to do? What are we being paid to do? Who does what and why? And how do we need to be organized to best effect? Now, these are the sort of simple questions you need to be asking. The team then has to understand what you do as a leader and quickly see and appreciate the benefits of what you do as the leader in the grand scheme of things. And then, and only then, will your people learn to follow you and support you the way they should. Now, just to look quickly at the key areas that demand your attention if you really want to develop good followership. And we can run through them. The top one, develop a proper team. We've touched on that. You don't want just a group of individuals. Develop the team's sense of purpose, its sense of direction, and its sense of worth. These things have been touched on already this afternoon. Communicate properly with your people. Not by texting all the time or emailing them, but communicate face to face. Find the time for that personal, I was going to say touch, but that's the wrong word, that personal link, face to face, eyeball to eyeball. When times get tough in the military, leaders go down to where the action is and eyeball, face to face, the local commander. That breeds confidence, trust, friendship, and many other things besides. It helps with communication as well. Keep your people informed in a timely fashion. I've often spoken to individuals who say, "Yeah, I've told them that. That's no problem. Yes, that's out on the email." But when were they told? When did it go out on the email? Did it all happen in a timely fashion so people could actually absorb the information, assimilate it, and decide where they fit into the grand scheme of things and what they have to do? Next one, extremely important. Earn their trust and respect. But also, the flip side of the coin is you have got to show trust and respect. You may be paying their salaries. You may be their boss. But if this relationship of leadership, followership, isn't a two-way thing, then you've lost it. It's not even going to get off the ground. And lastly, on this particular PowerPoint slide, you've got to get to know your people and find out what motivates them. And again, that has been touched on by an earlier speaker. Moving on to the last 5 points I'd like to make. You've got to make sure that as the leader, you are the one who inspires them. If no one can remember who you are, or when they last saw you, or what your name is, or indeed what you look like, then you're not going to get very far very fast with this leadership thing. By the same token, don't try to be in their faces so hard and often that actually all you're doing is doing their work for them. Avoid that. Give people responsibility. Delegate sensibly where necessary, where people have got the capabilities to do the job that's delegated. Then be firm but fair in your professional dealings with them. That's a big thing in the military. I've had men leave my command and say, "Hey boss, I think you're a real bastard, but you're firm but fair." Yeah, it's okay to be firm. It's easy to be firm in the military, but being fair is rather more difficult. It's a sort of moral thing. And if someone ever said to me, "You're a bastard," you're firm, but you're fair. I'm happy with that. And I think you should be too, in the non-military environment. Coming towards the end, show and demonstrate loyalty to those above and below you. Now this is quite significant in this followership thing. If you are expecting your people to follow you and be led by you in this sort of followership and leadership combination, if they cannot see that you are being a good follower to your boss, then again you'll get nowhere. You'll be regarded as a bit of a hypocrite. They have got to be able to learn from you. They have got to emulate. And it takes me on to my last point, again, which has been touched on today already, and I'm pleased about that. You've got to set and maintain a good example that's worth emulating. It's an old-fashioned word, but it means, copying. Do as I do. Copy by example. Now, if you can consider all those things and go a long way to getting it right, I think you're within you have a strong chance of developing a really good team that has these dual components of good leadership and good followership. There was one other bullet that I was going to put on the bottom of that PowerPoint slide. I was going to put reward success. Sounds good, doesn't it? But always in the military, it was reward success and punish failure. Well, I don't think and punish failure is quite appropriate. Not always anyhow, but it's something worth thinking about. There's an awful lot of rewarding success, giving bonuses, giving people holidays, giving them vouchers for this, that, and the other, bringing cakes into work. But I don't see much of some sort of retribution when things go seriously wrong in the organization. Who's the weak link? Who did it? Why did they do it? And what can we do about it? What can we do to make sure it doesn't happen again? So you can see why I didn't put that bullet on the bottom of that PowerPoint slide. So what do we take away at the end of all this? Well, I want you to accept that in the civilian, commercial and business environment, you've actually got the toughest job when it comes to achieving success by way of inspiring leadership. The armed forces, in comparison, have much less of a challenge and fewer barriers to success because although not everyone in the forces at any one time is an appointed leader, they're all practiced and professional followers. They know how to be led, and for obvious reasons, they want their leaders to lead them well. This is not a matter of simple blind obedience amongst people who live in fear of punishment or sanction, but rather a set of skills that all military professionals, young and old, have got in order to enable them to have flourishing leadership. Now, and here's something you might just take away with you. Very simple. In any organization, in your organization, no leadership is no good. Basic leadership is good. See a lot of that around. Good leadership, that's a lot better. Good leadership in an organization combined with good followership really is the best. So I hope I've convinced you that a climate of good followership is absolutely essential to the exercise of good, effective leadership. And I emphasize the word effective. You should never feel isolated as a leader, no matter where you work. Yes, leadership does entail responsibility, but you should strive to create a professional environment where those people for whom you have responsibility really do want to see you succeed and be part of that success.